Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Covington Board of Education to order. Becky, you would call the roll, please.
Ms. Evelyn? Mr. Gastrite?
Here.
Ms. Huff?
Here.
Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Mr. Haggard?
Here.
I'd like to make a motion to excuse Ms. Evelyn from the meeting.
I second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Will everyone join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you everyone for being here, both in person and virtually. Take a moment to silence your phones and smart devices. We'd appreciate it. Becky, is there any public input tonight? All right, we'll jump right into informational items. First, Director Foey is here to talk to us about Narcan in schools. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
I am here to bring information about bringing Narcan into the schools in our district. As you can see on the board agenda, according to KRS 217-186 and our board policy 09224 that was recently adopted with the modifications, we are now allowed to carry an opioid antagonist, which is a big word for Narcan, in our school district. Some districts are already doing this. This has already been at the state level for a couple years, but there has been certainly a greater push for it in the past year. And we have partnered with the Northern Kentucky Health Department. You'll see the attachments that are in your folders tonight. They have provided us with a medical director to oversee this program in the district, to provide us with a standing order for distribution and administration of Narcan. When we saw that this was probably coming in the board policy, we went ahead and started to be proactive about it. Our nurses went through training on administration and then training others, basically a train the trainer program for Narcan administration. So we currently have, including our nurses, 95 staff members who are already formally trained to use Narcan. It's just a matter of getting it in our buildings at this point. We wanted to bring the information to you before we, of course, put it in the buildings and make sure that there were no questions or concerns.
Are there any questions for Director Foey?
I have none. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Simpson?
No questions. I think it's an awesome idea. I'm glad you guys got, especially training and partnering with some of our community partners. So I think it's
Great. Any cost to us
No cost.
for this? All handled by the health department?
All handled by the health department. They will continue to replenish doses as needed for free. And they are also providing us with storage boxes for free, so it's easily identifiable within the buildings.
Awesome. Okay. Any approval needed from us, or is this just informational? Because we've already
It's just
passed the policy.
informational.
All right,
Yep.
great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, Director Grayman is here for contract services for the new school year. Welcome.
Okay, we have 3 contracts for this school year for special education students. Services for, I'm not sure which one's first there. Orientation and mobility. Would you like me to talk about each one separately? Or,
No.
okay.
No.
Orientation and mobility. We have a teacher of the hearing impaired. We don't have one hired in the district as an employee, so she contracts with us for those services and for pediatric therapy, which includes physical therapy and the option to use that agency as well for occupational therapy or speech therapy as needed. If we don't use them for that right now, but there's the potential.
Any questions for Director Grayman? No. Okay.
Right.
Seeing none, this will go on our consent agenda.
Yes.
Is that okay? Okay. Great. It'll be on our consent agenda. Thank you. Thanks.
I think I have the next item also.
Oh, yes, you do. Special education procedures.
Yes. There are some changes to the special education procedures based on some changes in the KRS related to special education. They're for students who are eligible under hearing impairment and vision impairment. There's similar changes. They both used to have some very restrictive pieces to them about the severity of the hearing impairment, the severity of the vision impairment, and those have been removed from the regulation. So they're being removed from our procedures. I had a typo that I noticed on the first page. I'll fix that. It still says 2021.
No worries. But that's kind of the whole scope of the changes.
That's really it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Director White is here to talk about data security and breach notification best practice. Welcome.
So this is a yearly requirement from KDE. Every year I have to notify you, the board, that I've reviewed the data safety, security, and best practices documentation that KDE has put together for all school districts prior to August 31st. That's a yearly requirement. So I know our new board members, this is their first time getting this information, but this is something that I'll bring to you every year. And essentially, KDE has outlined some best practices for school districts to follow when it comes to data safety and security. I review their documentation and I try to implement all those best practices for our school district to make sure our data is secure. And so this is just a notification that those best practices have been reviewed and have been implemented to the best that we can do in our school district. And I kind of put together this little cheat sheet that outlines everything. I know I put it in the packet I have sent to you all. I didn't know if you guys had any questions in regards to anything specific that you might have seen, but it's essentially everything that KDE requires for us within this packet in regards to notifications if we do suspect a data breach, how we go about that process, who we need to notify, how long we have to do the investigation and notify individuals that are involved. And so that, once again, this is something that I have to review and look at every year and notify you guys that I have done that. So it's just an informational item. There's no approval needed, but I have to bring you up to speed if there's any changes or anything that needs to be reviewed or implemented. So,
Any questions for Director White?
Hi.
Mrs. Huff?
How often do we get audited, so to speak, for if we have any problems or do we get
since I've
seen?
been in a position, I haven't experienced any type of audit or even aware of any audit that they may do. Yeah.
Good job, thanks.
All right.
Mr. Gastright?
Yeah, I know in my job, I've got to do a lot of training.
Mhm.
So just talking about basically how each employee who's on the network plays a role in the safety of the network, so
Right.
forth. I'm just wondering, I feel like I remember us having some kind of system in place. I didn't know if you could.
Well, we do have, it's not super extensive, but we do have some training or some information that we give out to the Safe Schools training that involves, FERPA and SIPA and those things. Every person that gets hired from the district, they have to go through that Safe Schools training. And so there's probably some more that we can do because things are constantly changing when it comes to data safety and security. And so from my standpoint, we just try to put those protections in place and then try to give people the understanding and knowledge that they need to try to help stay aware of things. A lot of times when you talk about data safety and security, I mean, the end users, they're not really thinking about it as much as I would in my department. But and so a lot of times the training could be good to give them the understanding and knowledge. A lot of times that's just from me sending an email, but I'll try to stay ahead of it and put these things in place so that it's not an extra thing they have to actually worry about. Because when you start throwing things out, they've really seen some of the data that I collect to try to see how many times school districts were being attacked. They probably would kind of freak out a little bit. School districts are attacked heavily right now for data safety and security. So it's something that we have a new website that's going to launch for the district, and there's probably going to be a lot of stuff there that I want to refer a lot of the staff to get some more understanding on things. So
I know you have a lot on your plate, but I would say at some point, if there was something else we should be doing just to make sure our network is protected.
Mhm.
I know we do everything from a hardware point of view to protect it, but the people who have access to it just with a password, I know in our office, our IT staff, they're always shooting us kind of phishing emails
Just to
They've
test
got-
you, right?
just to see how we react.
Right.
So they try different things. And
Well, I think we get a lot of those without me sending them out.
I know we do because I see them coming in. I know that if someone does, click on something and could potentially expose us to some.
And that's
those
the
attacks where they lock down your information and then that's
Yeah.
the nightmare scenario that runs through my head sometimes. But anyway.
yeah, that insurance actually has gone up for that specific reason. I know Annette's had me look into, actually explaining to the insurance company what protections we do have in place, and that's kind of weighed in on how much we have to pay in insurance. Because if someone does do something, they say, "Hey, we locked your account. Now you got to pay us in Bitcoin." So we're trying to avoid all that.
Yes. All right. But thank you for the update. Yeah. No further questions.
Mr. Simpson, any questions?
He's shaking his head no.
Okay, great. I just had one question. On the back, the current measures to prevent a data breach. There are two that are not highlighted. Does that mean those are two that we're not?
Those are the state. Those are
Oh,
the ones
gotcha.
the ones I highlight. I'm sorry, I didn't explain that.
Yes.
The highlight ones are ones that we do in district right now.
Gotcha.
The
Okay.
state ones are non-highlighted. The
Gotcha.
DDoS attacks are something that happens quite often, but they stop that at the state level. Basically, it's some type of cyber criminal trying to flood the school network with a bunch of information, data packets. It's basically you just throw a bunch of people into an area, a bunch of information, and someone's trying to sneak in with those people. That's kind of what a DDoS attack is in layman's terms. And so they stop that at the bottleneck down in Frankfurt. So they handle that.
Okay, great. Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have our personnel actions. Any questions for
No
Mr.
questions.
Kippenbrock?
I just have a comment.
Alrighty.
I'm your seasoned board member. I see these names over and over and over again that go extra and beyond of what their a typical school day and their typical job is as coaches and what lead teachers and things like that. I just want you to know that we appreciate you.
Great. Any additional questions? I'm just not going to let you go until feeling good. School starts on Monday. Looks like we got very few vacancies according to our report, but
Yep, we're still filling, hot off the presses. So
Right.
we're gonna have school Monday, and we're gonna be in good shape.
thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
All right, next we're going to move into the report of the treasurer. Director Birchie has several items for us.
I think my first item is the school's carryover. Each year, we close the books. We try to get all our POs paid, and then I pull numbers to put together for carryover on the school's SBDM allocations. And so that does entail some more things than non-personnel. Sometimes schools put money aside for different stipends and different things. So there's a lot of different things I have to pull to get to the carryover. So this spreadsheet kind of gives you some of those categories so that I can share that with the schools so they kind of know where all their money was left over. And then we take 5% because usually the board is gracious to give at least 5% and give the allocation out to say, okay, this is what the carryover would be. So the 5% allowed maximum is $21,500. And then when you'll see some schools were under their 5%, a little were over. I know some schools made huge progress compared to last year on spending their money because there was conversations had by Mr. Garrison and the principals. So the allocation for carryover we're asking is around $20,700. Just to reference last year, that allocation was roughly $21,500. So it usually comes in about, give or take, that 5% is 20, 25. Sometimes we've gone up to 30. And so it's been pretty stable because if you remember, we've been on 18, 19 counts, kid count, and we gave out allocations based on that. So it will start changing as future years now that we're going to be using who's really in the buildings. So we ask for 5%, and I always say, please try to give 5% because they have copy clicks that they don't know what they are charged until a month later when we get the bill. So it's kind of hard to budget to know what kind of money would be left. And or field trips. Now that we're getting back in prior to, post COVID, where they're doing field trips, we have bus drivers. They don't know who's going to drive on that field trip until right before the field trip. So we always try to say, will you please at least give 5%? For those reasons.
Did you want to add something?
I was just going to say that if for any principals watching, I'm proud of you. They did. It looked like, as I looked through the report, that most of them either got to the 5% or below the 5%, which was outstanding. So great job, principals.
I do want to say thank you very much. I have been hollering for this for years, so I appreciate all the hard work. Thank you.
And this is an information item that can come back to you as an approval next time.
Okay. Any additional questions? All right, we'll put this on the consent agenda if there's no objections. Next, we have the BG4.
Yeah, my next item is a BG4 for this Latonia project. If you remember the last couple board meetings, we had a BG1 revision I needed because there was ESSER 2 money left over, and we wanted to not use that ESSER 2 money for a future construction project because ESSER 2 is closing in September of 2023. So we did that revision to the BG1. Now that we've done that, the BG4 is closing out the construction side. So that's what this form is. Closing out the construction side of it, where this is an information item. I can put it on for the next board agenda for approval.
Any questions? Any objection to consent?
No objection.
Great. Welcome, Miss Edlin. Is here with us virtually now.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
We can.
My next agenda item is the monthly financials, where you have the Munis financial report, a balance sheet, all the spreadsheets I do on our cash accounts that's in our bank, along with all the warrants. I know Mr. Haggard, he does reach out to me usually every month to ask questions. A lot of times I have to divvy them out to people to get the right answers, because I don't claim to know everything about every expenditure. So I rely on my team members to get that information to Mr. Haggard. So he usually emails me. You can email me, you can call me. I can, do whatever's flexible to you. But we do have a lot of questions being asked, which is great because these are expenditures coming through the books. This is your normal packet of information you get every month.
Any questions about financials or the warrants? If there's no questions, may I have a motion to approve both, please?
Make a motion to do the monthly financials
Second.
as well as the warrants.
Gotcha. All right. Becky, you call the roll, please.
Yes.
Ms. Edelin?
Yes.
Mr. Gastrite?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Haggard?
Yes.
I think Mr. Haggard wanted to open up conversations in my area, in my realm, getting ready for the tax hearing next Wednesday. So I wanted to make sure I bring that up. And I know there's a few points and comments Mr. Haggard would like to make, and then just have an open conversation. So do you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah. So I just wanted to, obviously we're having our tax hearing next Wednesday at the high school at 6 p.m. To go over, all of our different options. I just wanted to say I appreciate Mr. Garrison and Director Birchie met with me on Friday, so I can understand kind of all of our options that are available to us. We have what the administration is recommending, and then kind of what all the different options are, according to Director Birchie's report. The keeping the rate the same, the compensated, the 1%, the 2%, the 3%, and so that was really helpful. I've tried to do a lot of outreach with the community to kind of understand where people are feeling about this. So, I'm going to continue to reach out to folks and kind of understand where they are. I'm encouraging everyone to come out next Wednesday if they want to talk about this with us to the public hearing, so we can understand where they're coming from, or to email all of us to say, hey, this is what I'm feeling about where you're going with taxes. And so I just wanted to give us just another opportunity if anyone else as a whole group had questions for Director Birchie, the superintendent, before we head into our hearing
Now, Tom,
Wednesday.
can I ask, did you pass out that spreadsheet of the equalization rate, the equivalent rate, or should I do that?
You should do that. That
Okay.
would be great.
So there's some information that we asked Compass or I went on the KDE's website, and there's a spreadsheet. So I'll make sure I send that to you tomorrow because Tom does have that. But I want to make sure I share it with everybody. I wasn't sure if you had gotten it yet. And what it is they take every school district.
I shared it with the entire board.
Oh, did you already?
Yes.
Oh,
I
okay.
shared they all have.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you had it. And so I just want to make reference that there is something out on KDE's website that shows all the taxes. And so it's what school has the nickel, second nickel, who does the utility tax. So it's a really good snapshot of like where taxes are for each school district. And so there's a column on the spreadsheet that says levied equivalent rate because we're all different. You know, we don't take a utility tax here in Covington. We don't have a second nickel. That's what we're talking about next week for the second nickel. So what it does is KDE does this. They put all the taxes together and come out with this levied equivalent rate. So if you rank and look at that, so what Tom did is he pulled out Northern Kentucky districts and put that on a list to show all those rates. So that's what that spreadsheet is, so you could get some backstory to kind of know what you're seeing that Mr. Garrison sent out to you. It's very eye-opening. I've never seen this before, so it was very good data. I felt like it's great that we have this. We do list the county schools, but they're such an outlier compared to us independent school districts. So Tom put it into all the independents. We are the lowest tax rate when you put all taxes together. Covington Independent's the lowest one out of every other independent school district in this surrounding area. So I believe that's good information that the board should understand when they're going into these conversations, talking to the public when they show up, and just any conversation you have amongst yourselves or with Mr. Garrison and I.
It was very interesting information. You know, I think oftentimes when we're having these conversations about setting the tax rate, we're only focused on looking at the real property tax rate, which obviously is the biggest chunk of revenue that we get locally. But yes, when you see it all kind of together like that with all the other districts who add on the second, some third nickels, the majority, I think we're only one of 2 or 3 districts in all of Northern Kentucky that does not levy the utility tax. There are a couple of districts that levy the occupational license tax. And so it was pretty interesting to see that we have the lowest local tax burden of all the independent districts in Northern Kentucky.
So if you need to dive deeper into that and have questions, please, reach out to myself between now and next week, and I'll get those answers for you.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't think so. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have the consent agenda. We have approval of our last meeting minutes, a fundraiser request from Latonia Elementary, and a fundraiser request from 6th District. Anyone?
I just had one comment. Mr.
Sure.
Haggard.
I'm sorry.
I believe that Ms. Gramman, when you were speaking about your action item, you had indicated that you were fine with placing it on the consent agenda. But I think there might be some confusion because it appears that you're asking for approval of these before school starts. Okay. So I think if someone from the board could make a motion to place it on this evening's consent agenda, or we can vote on it individually, I think that probably is what we should do.
So I'm going to make a motion to move the special education department services contracts to a voting.
I second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? No opposition. All right.
Okay, so now I'm going to move to approve the special education department
Thank you.
services contract.
Second.
Becky, you call the roll, please.
Ms. Huff,
Yes.
Mr. Gastrite?
Yes.
Evelyn?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Haggard?
Yes.
Anything else I need to do?
No, and I apologize for the interruption.
No,
Okay.
thank you
Didn't
for the
know
catch.
when to do
No.
that.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Becky, you call the roll, please.
Ms. Huff,
Yes.
Mr. Gastrite?
Yes.
Ms. Evelyn?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Haggard?
Yes. All right, we have individual approval item tonight, and that's the Gear Up grant. Mr. Grine is here. I have several questions, but I will let my colleagues go first.
I just remember you had asked for whether or not this was really good for us and if it's productive, basically.
We're one of about 10 school districts in the state of Kentucky that wrote the grant together 5 or 6, I think it was 6 years ago. It's in a typical normal school year, I think it's an excellent service for our students because they get to take a lot of field trips and things like that. But unfortunately, during COVID, we weren't allowed to take a lot of field trips. So they're just really getting back into that. So I do think there's a real advantage to having it. It does help give students an opportunity to go to the colleges and visit and multiple places throughout hopefully their senior year this year. We can decide if we want to rewrite the grant moving forward. I think it'll be up for the fifth or I think it's the 5th year of the grant. So I think it's in a normal setting without COVID. I think it's very helpful for our students.
I think on my tenure as being a board member, there's some things that we have done that really wasn't productive for us as a district or our students. So I really was hoping that we would have data to show what we did, why we did it, and was it successful in the future.
And I can get that Gear Up data to share with you from the people that work the Gear Up grant. And I did reach out to them by email this week. And she said she could pull some of that data for us and we can look at it. So.
Great, thank you.
Great. I believe Mr. Simpson has a question.
So thank you for bringing this to our attention. So, because I didn't know that it was in partnership with several other school districts. Who was the actual lead on the grant? Who actually submits the grant to the funder or the data to the funder?
Who writes the grant? I'm not sure. I
said who's the lead organization, school district on the grant? You said you wrote it in partnership with other school districts. Is that correct?
It's the council.
Yeah, like I say, about 6 years ago, all school districts in the state of Kentucky had an opportunity to write it. But there's certain districts that have a better opportunity to write it based on their student population, their demographics. Covington has a very wide variety of students, a lot of high need students. So that's one of their priorities. So like a Fort Thomas isn't going to be eligible for the Gear Up grant. Fort Mitchell probably, there are just more at-risk districts. And so that's part of the advantage we had at that time. We have a lot of kids that are homeless. We have a lot of kids that are free and reduced lunch. So that helps you if you're part of the grant to be part of it.
And I think, Mr. Simpson, to your question, actually, the Council for Post-Secondary Education is the lead agency on this grant.
Understood. That's what I needed to know. Okay. Now, so the data that so are we able to get like a copy of maybe like an annual report or the report from that council submits to the funder?
Yeah, we should be able to get that. So I should be able to get that and email it to you sometime in the next week or so.
Okay, thanks. And I guess I want to be a little bit specific. We're just not looking for stuff pulled out we would like to see, it would be nice to see like what the final report is so that we can see like what the deliverables are and what.
The ultimate goal for Gear Up is that they want more kids having an opportunity to go to college. And so
I
that's one
understand
of the
that, but let me finish the thought. I just want to make sure that we get we want to see the deliverables as it's written on paper. And that's kind of why we want to see, what I'd like to see, that full report.
Yeah, because it's a federal grant report, so they should have a pretty detailed list of outcomes that they're reporting to the federal government. And for us to see that would be very helpful. Hopefully it's broken down by school districts that are participating. We can kind of see what ours are. Because I think I know, obviously this is my third year of asking about this particular grant. I know in the past they've provided a lot of good outputs. Number of kids who went on a visit, number of kids who filled out that's great, that's awesome. But I'd like to see outcomes, right? Is this really improving our college going rate? I talked with the superintendent about this on Friday. This certainly is not harming our kids. It's not doing that. It's a good additive, but I think if we're not doing it in coordination with other efforts that are going on, then it does kind of become a distraction. I think the work that Gear Up does is great. I worked with them closely when I led the College Access Collaborative up at the high school. They were great partners, but that was about getting everybody in a room, getting all those services coordinated so that they were doing what the principal and the counselors needed them to do, not necessarily what they wanted to do, but it was about what the principals and the counselors were asking them to do so we could have kind of joint efforts moving forward. And we saw great results from that. The rate of college going students went up quite dramatically. My other question that I don't feel like we get $12,400 out of this. I mean, I know the bulk of the benefit to us is they're placing staff in our schools and they're doing kind of a curriculum and they're running those things. But so what are we spending the $12,400 on?
There's some advantages on this that we don't have to give them cash or anything like that, or say it's a matching. We can use some of the things that we're already doing to match our
To answer some of that question, I did explain this to Mr. Haggard. I know some of that is transportation costs when we were able to go to college visits, when we were able to take these groups of students to different colleges. I know that covered some of the costs. But Annette, you would know even more than me, but
Yeah, we have to fill out what's a match form, and so that's stuff costs we've already would incur. You take a percentage of the principal's salary, and then you put the square footage of an office that we let them have. So it's the in-kind match stuff, and using a phone, a cell phone, and things like that. But we haven't done this for so long because of COVID and the expenses that would be turned in. It was mostly on taking those trips, and then we would get reimbursed for that. The trip itself, or the transportation costs.
And so this is a Fund 2 budget. It should be listed in Fund 2. Who oversees this budget? Like, who's the approver of this spending?
I don't know if you're on the I know I do all the accounting stuff.
You ultimately do it, but
right. Okay. Yeah. So I didn't think you were part of the approving it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Mr. Gastright, any questions? Any additional questions, Ms. Edlin, Mr. Simpson? Okay.
No, thanks everyone for your input.
Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the Gear Up grant.
Second.
Becky, you call the roll, please.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Mr. Gastright?
Yes.
Ms. Edlin?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
And Mr. Haggard?
Yes. I don't believe there's an addendum agenda tonight. Is there a report of the attorney?
Nothing to report this evening.
All right. Further discussion, there seems to be a very nice one-pager of our newly adopted strategic plan in your red folder. So thank you, Ms. Vance and Ms. Wood and the communications team for putting this together. Looks great.
we would like to give you an update. We would like to give you a quick update on the RS. What is it there? Request for proposal, RFP. Yes, and RFP. I think if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Kippenbrock, you might have sent out a draft to, I know myself and maybe Mr. Haggard.
Right now it's sitting with you, so it could go out to them, to the board as soon as Monday. Basically, what I did is took some of those example documents and the shell or the draft, if you will, is complete. So I guess it's ready for feedback on the specific deliverables and qualifications you all want listed. Some of the things I took a stab at, some are rather obvious, I think, but you may want more or to change the wording on something. So that could come as early as next week.
So our goal is to facilitate some type of dialogue at the next meeting about, if you all get that, if I send it out to you via email tomorrow, y'all review it. That way at the next meeting, you can come in prepared to give us any edits or changes you think it needs. And then we'll be ready to submit it to
And this
What's
is
this for?
for the master planning.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Gastrite's master planning.
So there is a proposed timeline on there. Feel free to adjust that, of course. But I just wanted some sort of shell to start.
I think it's perfect.
And the only other thing that I wanted to mention to the board is we had opening day this past Monday and a lot of back to school events, and Mr. Gaswright attended, thank you, the opening day events, and it was just a great celebration of a return to school. We had teachers and faculty and staff cheering all over the place. It was just an exciting array of activities at opening day. And again, that's my perspective. I'm sure you share that. I know the folks out in the audience also share that because they were there. It was just an exciting opening day. And then our back to school events have been exciting as well. The middle school had Sam Hubbard, which was a good day. All the families there was packed, giving out backpacks. And then I've went to several of the other back to school events throughout the week. And I think there's just an excitement in the air about the return to school. So, and especially if next week, if it's cool outside, it'll really be nice a return to school if we're not dealing with extreme heat temperature. So just wanted to report that to the board.
Yeah, and I'll just add that that event was great. The energy in the auditorium was fantastic, and it seemed like you were enjoying yourself there in front of the crowd. So it was very exciting, and I hope you had a great day. It sounded like you had a great day the following day with Hector at a reception. So.
Absolutely. It was terrific. And we learned a lot. I mean, we had, Dr. Montanaro gave us some 8 activities. I mean, great activities that work for all students, but with an emphasis on building community, social, emotional learning, to making our newcomers feel more a part of our culture, feel like they're included. So he was really talking a lot about an inclusive culture for all kids. And it was great.
Yes, we're very excited about the first day of school on Monday. Just a reminder that our next board meeting, well, we have a public hearing next Wednesday, our public hearing for our tax hearing. But our first board meeting in September is when we switch back, resume our pre-pandemic tradition of going out to our schools. So September 14th, we will be at the Transformational Learning Center up at the Children's Home of Northern Kentucky at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. So make sure you have your, absolutely. And we do have our KSBA Fall Regional Meeting for Northern Kentucky is September the 5th. Can we still sign up if we haven't signed up yet? Everyone signed up, so we'll all be there and representing Covington well. So any additional announcements or bits of discussion? Ms. Edlin, Mr. Simpson, anything else?
I just had a few comments to share, if that would be okay for back to school.
Of course.
All right, well, I just wanted to start off by really doing a big thank you to our staff, from our administrators to our teachers to our instructional assistants to our classified staff to our lunch ladies to our bus drivers, our janitors, and really everyone in between. Each and every single person in this district plays a huge role in the outcomes and the success of our students. And I would be remiss if I didn't start off the new school year by saying thank you for the work that you do, not only throughout the school year, but before the school year. I know that our teachers are typically busy planning over the summer, and many of our classified staff are prepping on how they can best serve our kids. So I thank each of you for your work and your upcoming work in the school year. Can everybody still hear me okay? You all are frozen on my end.
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'll keep going. Our families, I just want to say that you all are partners in this work, and we look forward to your partnership in this upcoming year and further building community alongside you. We want to hear from you. We want to be part of creating that community with you and learning about how we best can serve you and remove barriers so families and students can succeed. And we want to know those things so that we can best help you and help students. And then, of course, to our students, we're so excited. Those that might be entering school for the first time this year, or those that are heading into their senior year of high school. It's such an exciting time, and I know that we cannot wait to welcome you in our schools. And I know the teachers are so excited to make you part of our Covington school family. And then to our community, I think sometimes we forget how important the community is in the outcomes of our school district. And the truth is that when our community is involved within our school district, we are so much stronger together. And I just want to encourage community members and organizations to see how you can, within your own organization and within your own capacity, provide support for the great work that's going on within the district. I think about when I was a teacher and I was trying to manage the day-to-day of teaching in a classroom, and how at times when organizations would reach out to me with resources, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Someone is helping me further the work that's in my classroom. So I encourage community members and organizations to seek ways to where you can be a part of this school year. We will be stronger together. And then kind of the last thing that I want to talk about is I've learned a lot about the value of psychological safety in the workplace. And psychological safety, for those that may not be aware, is the belief that we will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas or questions, concerns, or even mistakes. And I think that this is more important now than ever. We have all been through so much over the past few years, from navigating a pandemic to losing family members, to really seeing some of the challenges of our students and our community be magnified. And I get a little bit emotional because I was teaching online while I learned a lot about what my students and what members of the community were going through. And the truth is that we will be so much stronger when we work together. And I just want to say that I'm really proud of what we're going to do as a district. And I think the more that we are vulnerable with one another and create opportunities for us to
Is he, Leonard, still there? All right. Looks like we have a bit of a.
Looks like Kareem froze too.
Yes, looks like we are frozen there. I will say though, I think I would certainly echo all of your comments, Ms. Edlin. We always appreciate the perspective that you're bringing to the board, and I think your remarks around psychological safety are certainly important and something to lift up as we go into a new academic year. And so with that and where we are technologically, may I have a consensus to adjourn this meeting?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all.